Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to Cinematic Reviews presented by Quantum Podcasts. As always, I'll be your host, Chris, and this is a show about all things movies and TV. Where we continue our Marvel marathon in preparation for Avengers Doomsday, which is only a few months away. It's coming out on December 18th. We're going to be talking about Black Widow. Another Phase 4 film, kind of out of order in the timeline, because of the unfortunate death of Natasha Romanoff in Endgame. This is more of a prequel. It's in between Civil War and Infinity War, so it kind of bridges the gap between those two films. But we get to honor Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow today in this film and talk about what we love about her, what we didn't like about this movie. It's going to be a fun time. I'm excited to finally talk about this film on the podcast today. We're also going to react to Maul Shadow Lord, the newest Star Wars project on Disney+. Awesome show. Excited to finally talk about that. But before we get started, a couple of reminders at the top of the episode. You can watch the show every week at youtube.com/thecinematicreviews. You can also listen to the audio version on your favorite podcast network. We're around the world, so wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find the show on there. Also, check out the social media pages on Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok. Post all the graphics from every episode, news, updates, episode schedules. I just set out the Fright Nights 2026 schedule. It's going to be awesome. Excited for that. Spider-Man's coming up. Mandalorian is coming out. A lot of great movies this summer coming up, so we're going to have a lot of new releases to talk about. And also check out the website of the show, cinematic-reviews.com. You can set up a profile, rate the movies like I do on the show with the ultimate popcorn rating. You can watch episodes of the show, trivia games to test your knowledge. A lot of fun stuff to do on there. Look at everybody else's reviews. You can write your own reviews. Tons of stuff on there and more to come for the website. It's constantly growing. Just added a bunch of shorts from the Michael review that we did the other day. Awesome stuff. So go and check out the official website of the podcast. So with that, let's head over to today's news and reactions and talk about Maul Shadow Lord. So, Maul Shadow Lord is the newest project from Star Wars. It happens after the events of Clone Wars, so we get to catch up on a couple of different characters here, mainly Darth Maul, once again voiced by Sam Witwer, who has voiced Maul in a bunch of Star Wars projects, Clone Wars, Rebels. Now he has his own show, Maul Shadow Lord. This picks up after Order 66, where the Empire is now in control. They're hunting Jedis. Maul is still attempting to get his syndicate going underneath the radar of the Empire. He's not the biggest fan of the Empire as well, so it's kind of common ground here with what we would consider our good guys. There are two Jedis that we get introduced here, Master Daki and Devon. I think it's how you say it. Again, terrible with names, but I'm pretty sure it's Daki and Devon, two Jedis that are hiding on this system, and they run into Maul and go up against the Empire with him because they have this common enemy. But Sam Witwer, he's the man of the hour. He's such a fan favorite now. Previously, I think the first thing I saw him in was in Smallville as Doomsday. Then he was the voice of Starkiller in the Force Unleashed video games. And then he got the role of Darth Maul. And he just brought the character to life. He got to do a lot of different things with the animated format of these shows. Now, nothing against Ray Parker, who was the live-action version of Darth Maul in Phantom Menace. It's just he wasn't given a whole lot to do back in '99, whereas with technology, with the animation, Sam Witwer is able to do a lot more, specifically with the voice. Now, if they decide to bring Darth Maul back in live action, do they bring back Ray Parker? Do they have Sam Witwer become the live action version of Maul because everybody is so accustomed to his voice? That's on Disney Star Wars to decide. Ray Parker is still in shape. He does a lot of performances for Comic-Cons and Star Wars events. But everybody is now so accustomed to Sam Witwer's voice that it would be kind of weird if they shifted back to Ray Parker. They did bring him in live action in the Solo film, if you remember, towards the end of the film where he's talking to Emilia Clarke's character via hologram. So we kind of got the live action version of Maul, But it's going to be tough to shift back to Ray Parker after what Sam Witwer has done. And he's done a phenomenal job. I love his voice acting skills. I love what he's done with the Maul character. And that's what's made this show so incredible was him coming back, really going deep into the psyche of Maul, catching up with him on the events leading up into Rebels, which is where we see him again. And then he unfortunately dies in Rebels, if I do remember right, if I'm remembering the timeline correctly. So, but his entrance at the beginning of this show was probably one of the best parts of the show. It was in the trailer, but it was a great way to set up the return of Maul, who has become a really big fan favorite ever since Phantom Menace, with the dual lightsabers, which blew everybody's mind back in '99. I remember me as a 5-6-year-old kid watching Phantom Menace for the first time and seeing the double-sided lightsabers, was just like, didn't even know that was possible. Blew everybody's mind. And then now the character's just kind of blown up within the Star Wars lore with all these animated shows and what they're able to do with animation, with the fighting and all that. This one's got a different kind of look to it. It's more painted artistry more versus, Clone Wars, Rebels, and Bad Batch are a little bit slightly different animation style, but it still has that Clone Wars feel to it. But you can easily tell by the way a lot of it's looks like more hand painted than it is the animated style that they normally do with these shows in Star Wars. But I really like it. I think it gives it its own little character to it, its own style. And we're more than likely going to get a season 2 by the way they ended this, with Devon seeing her master get killed by the hands of the Inquisitors and Darth Vader. She ends up becoming the apprentice to Darth Maul, which seems to be his master plan throughout this whole show, was to gain an apprentice so that he could be, Sith master or whatever the heck he wants to do. So we could easily get, 3, 4, 5 seasons of this show, and just kind of have this big chunk of space in the lore with Darth Maul. But we'll see what the future holds. It sounds like a lot of fans are very positive with the show. A lot of critics love the show. So I think it's just only a matter of time before we get more seasons of Shadow Lord. So it's a great show. Check it out. All the episodes are available on Disney Plus today. Before we switch to our next thing, the popcorn rating. We can't forget about that. So the popcorn rating for Darth Maul, let me pull that up here, is the golden popcorn. So I went back and forth on this. I watched a couple of the episodes, especially the finale, a couple of times before deciding what the rating was going to be. And I landed on the golden popcorn. This is a fantastic Star Wars story. It's a great Star Wars product. And the fact that they brought in Darth Vader was awesome. You would think Darth Vader would overshadow Darth Maul a little bit, but he didn't. They were kind of on common ground. It's two of the big, heavy Sith characters that everybody loves, and they're finally fighting each other, which is great in this early project before Rebels, before Bad Batch, before all that, or after Bad Batch, technically. I think I'm still kind of leery on what the timeline is with Maul and Bad Batch, but way before Rebels. But it was cool that we finally got Darth Vader and Darth Maul going up against each other, who everybody seems to kind of argue sometimes, speaking of the fandom, which would Darth Maul kick Darth Vader's ass? Would Darth Vader kick Darth Maul's ass? It looked pretty much as if Darth Vader was kicking Darth Maul's ass most of the time in that episode. But I'll leave it up to you guys which team you're on, Team Maul, Team Vader. I think Vader could easily kick Darth Maul's ass with the strength and skill of the Force that he has. But Darth Maul would be a worthy opponent against him because of his skill with the lightsaber and his techniques with the Force. But Darth Vader's got that brute strength and that anger behind him that just makes him unstoppable. But again, I'll let you guys decide who would win that fight if we do get another one. But, golden popcorn status for Maul, Shadow Lord, fantastic Star Wars show. Excited for more Darth Maul in the future. So go ahead and check out all those episodes. They're about 25 to 30 minutes long an episode, so it's an easy binge. I did it in a couple of days, so by all means, have at it. It's a fantastic show. So check it out today on Disney Plus. So with that, let's take a quick break, and then we'll dive into our featured film of today's episode, Black Widow. This episode is brought to you by Dubby Energy. Still drinking energy that quits before you do? Stop crashing, stop shaking, and start performing. Meet Dubby Energy, clean energy made for gamers, creators, and anyone who refuses to slow down. With zero sugar, no jitters, and no crash, W keeps you locked in whether you're grinding ranked, streaming for hours, or pushing through those late nights. There's no crash, no fade, just gas. Drink different, perform better. Grab W Energy and use code Cinematic10 to get 10% off your order today.
I was an Avenger before I got this family. I made mistakes choosing between what the world wants you to be and who you are. We have to go back to where it all started.
Where did you think I was all this time?
We have unfinished business.
My girls are the toughest girls in the world.
I'm sorry. We had our orders and we played our rules.
It wasn't real.
It was real to me. To me, you were everything.
Bring her home.
Put your seatbelts on. She's such a mom.
One thing's for sure. I'm done running from my past.
So Black Widow came out on July 9th, 2021. This was another project affected by the COVID pandemic, so it got pushed back quite a bit. This was supposed to be the first project, I believe, in Phase 4 post-Endgame, but that ended up going to WandaVision because of the COVID pandemic and scheduling and things like that. But we finally got it on July 9th, 2021. I did not see this in theaters. This was a film that was pretty much direct onto Disney Plus. They didn't really show it in theaters at the time, so this was a Disney Plus exclusive. So we watched it on there. But I really enjoyed it. It's a great film. It's a great way to honor Scarlett Johansson's time as Black Widow. As we said before, she passed away in Avengers Endgame, so this was kind of her swan song, the way to honor her and just kind of give her her own solo film. Finally, after all these years of her playing the character back since Iron Man 2. Looking at the box office, it grossed about $379 million, which was because of the pandemic. It didn't have that big theater performance. It was strictly Disney Plus and a few other limited screenings, and it had a budget of about $200 million, so it barely broke even. Small profit there, but I know there was a lot of arguments back and forth between Scarlett Johansson and Disney itself when it came to release of this, where she didn't get the theater, impact that it could have. I think if this was like, if the pandemic didn't happen, this was like a full go, theater performance, I think it could have easily gotten up into 700 million, 750, maybe even 800 million mark with this movie. Because it's Scarlett Johansson, because it's a fan favorite, Black Widow, I think, and with Florence Pugh's performance, David Harbour's performance, I think this could have gotten a lot more profit if they would have just bit the bullet and released it. But we're past all that now. Arguments aside, with how they handled the pandemic with these movies, that was the big detriment of this, was that it was a Disney Plus exclusive pretty much and only shown on the streaming service. So that kind of hurt it a lot. But I still really enjoyed it. It's actually a pretty decent movie. A lot of people have a lot of hate towards it, mainly for the villains of this movie. And we'll talk about them, of course, especially during the villain scale later on. But I think it's actually a pretty good movie. It's really enjoyable. A lot of great action. Scarlett Johansson is the queen. She's my favorite actress of all time. So I'll watch anything that she's in. Natasha Romanoff is one of my favorite characters that she has played. And she's fantastic in here as her kind of swan song to the character. But we also get a lot of really great performances from the side characters. You know, Florence Pugh makes her Marvel debut as Natasha's sister Yelena, fellow Black Widow. She kind of steals the show a lot with her comedic responses to Scarlett Johansson. You know, just the adorableness that it comes with Florence Pugh. But she is kind of what sticks out in this movie the most. She now has become a fan favorite, just like Scarlett Johansson was, where she ends up in Hawkeye, she ends up in Thunderbolts, and she just kind of steals the show from this a little bit. David Harbour is introduced as well as Alexei, or aka Red Guardian, who is basically Russia's version of Captain America, so to speak. He always talks about this rivalry between him and Cap, and honestly, I don't think Cap really knows who the hell Red Guardian is, but Alexei has built up this rivalry in his head of Red Guardian versus Captain America. You know, I'm the true, you know, super soldier, things like that, or whatever it is. But David Harbour's always great. He's always entertaining. He is kind of the father figure to Natasha and Yelena. Then we also get Rachel Weisz as Melina, who is the kind of the mother figure to Natasha and Yelena as their kind of adopted parents. She is one of the top widows for Dreykov, who is played by Ray Winstone, who is kind of the villain or co-villain of the movie. He has created the Black Widows and kind of controls them through pheromones and mind control and things like that. So, and then we also get Taskmaster. We're introduced to Taskmaster finally, who ends up being Antonia, who is the daughter of Dreykov. So they gender swapped Taskmaster, which we'll talk about here. I have it in one of my notes about the fan backlash on gender swapping Taskmaster, because that's a character that everyone's been wanting to see in an MCU project, and they finally got it, but it wasn't in the way that they were hoping. We get introduced to Mason, who's kind of the supply guy for Black Widow. He's great in the few scenes that he is. And then we get the return of William Hurt, Secretary Ross, who ends up passing away, unfortunately. This is one of the last projects that he does before passing away, but he got one more shot at playing Thunderbolt Ross, or Secretary Ross, in the MCU, so we get to catch up with him as well. So that kind of rounds up the cast. Looking up the director, Kate Shortland, who I'm not really familiar with. Let's kind of look at her IMDb here. Really just Black Widow is all I've seen that I recognize on here. Looks like she's done a few projects, mostly shows, but it seems like Black Widow is probably the biggest thing that she's known for. She did pretty decent as a director. Again, I mean, this wasn't the greatest directed or written movie. It mainly falls on the shoulders of the performance of Scarlett Johansson and Florence Pugh and David Harbour. But there's a lot of stuff that could have been done a lot better. Like the story, for instance, is fine. You know, Natasha finally taking down the Red Room, taking down the widows, freeing the widows was okay. Taskmaster didn't seem like she got a lot to do in here. Ray Winstone was a very poorly written villain for sure. It's just a lot of stuff I think they could have just really improved on. I mean, the music's pretty good. The action is actually pretty entertaining. But it was just missing something, you know, something special that an MCU movie normally does. I mean, it had the humor that you're used to with Florence Pugh, with David Harbour. But yeah, it's just lacking in a lot of stuff, and I think it mainly comes down to the writing and the directing. But still, it's an entertaining movie that I enjoy watching. I've seen it a few times since it's come out, but it's definitely one of the ones that I've seen the least amount of times with the MCU, but I enjoy it every time I do watch it. Let's get to a couple of notes here before we tackle the categories for today. So, introducing more widows and the Red Room. So, we've always been hearing about the Red Room from Natasha. We've gotten a few flashbacks in like Age of Ultron on what the Red Room was, but we finally get to see it. It's a facility that is ran by Dreykov, where he establishes the Black Widows as basically world-conquering machines, where they are unstoppable, they're highly trained, highly motivated, and mind-controlled. So we get to see what she has kind of gone through. That opening scene in the movie is one of the most disturbing openings of a movie, not just within the MCU, but in just general. I remember watching this for the first time, and we get to that opening credits sequence of, all the girls coming out of the ship containers. You got Ray Winstone ordering men to separate the girls. It was obviously a dig at, human trafficking, especially with women around the world with sex slaves and things like that. So that was a clear portrayal of like, hey, he's basically a human trafficker, and this is what it looks like. And we're just kind of tie that into, and I remember reading a lot of reviews and Reddit stuff on that opening sequence, and a lot of people were disturbed by it, and it was blatantly obvious that this was a portrayal of what human trafficking is in the world, and they wanted to paint Ray Winstone as this big sex human trafficking figure within the world, and he's just an evil piece of shit, which he is. But it was the darkest opening sequence we've ever gotten in an MCU movie. It's one of the darkest that I've seen at the beginning of a movie. It was just, the vibes was just like, it set a tone, but then it kind of flips. It doesn't really go back to that anymore. It's just a normal MCU movie after that. So it was kind of out of place with that opening sequence where it's just really dark and really shocking to see this, but then it just switches to a normal Marvel movie with its lighthearted comedy, stuff like that. So the tone is all over the place in this, especially with that opening sequence. But it was really cool to finally see the Red Room, meet some more widows, universe expanding. Elena ends up continuing the Black Widow legacy through her with Hawkeye and Thunderbolts. We'll see if we get more widows popping up like we do with the Wakandans. They always seem to pop up. So we'll see if they do the same thing with the Black Widows in the future. Taskmaster fan outrage. We got to talk about this one. So the gender swap, I'm fine with it. I'm not like attached to the Taskmaster character like a lot of people are. I didn't really care what they did with him. I was just glad that we finally got Taskmaster. Now, a big fan theory, if you guys remember, was that since this was in between Civil War and Infinity War, and with Hawkeye not being a part of Infinity War, a big fan theory when this movie came out was that Hawkeye was actually Taskmaster, and this is why he was absent from the MCU, because he was secretly Taskmaster for a time, and then he ended up becoming Ronin. That would have been cool. Like, I would have preferred that way more than what they did here from a writing standpoint and from a universe building standpoint. Now, I get it. Making Hawkeye Taskmaster is kind of probably not what fans want either, because Taskmaster, it's its own character within the Marvel lore in the comics. But that would have been so much better than what they did here, where it was Dracov's daughter who was mind-controlled because she got blown up by Natasha back in the day. And this was kind of Dracov's revenge on Natasha, was using his half-blown-to-hell daughter, making her a super soldier with the downloading the different mimicking moves of other heroes to take down Natasha. Now, if you aren't familiar with the Taskmaster abilities, it's not like a supercomputer like you see in the movie. It's actually an ability that that Taskmaster's given, where he can copy whatever fight moves from anybody that he fights. Most of the time, it's Captain America, Black Widow, Hawkeye, and Spider-Man that you see here. Because you get that cool scene where Taskmaster's watching the footage of Hawkeye fighting and the Avengers fighting and downloading all those into her brain. And I get it, changing it a little bit to introduce technology and how this is possible. But I think the Hawkeye fan theory would have been much better than what we got here with Antonia being Taskmaster. But again, I'm not so attached to the Taskmaster character when it was revealed that it was gender swapped, which was with the daughter. I mean, it made sense. Taskmaster being a Black Widow or a former Black Widow within the community made sense. Kept it in close, kept it in house. That was an interesting take on it, but I think the Hawkeye being Taskmaster reveal would have been so much better and probably would have hit more home, knowing that he was mind-controlled again because of the events of Avengers when he was mind-controlled by Loki. That would have been a cool callback as well. We would have gotten a cool fight between him and Natasha and probably would have brought them closer. But again, if you would have did that, we wouldn't have been able to get Taskmaster and Thunderbolts, which her time was cut short anyways, because that was kind of them writing off the character because of the backlash in this movie. But Taskmaster was a huge negative when this movie came out, but I'm not as negative on it. I'm more so on the writing and how they went about it, so to speak. I'm not necessarily the gender swap. I really don't care. And then Civil War and Black Widow. I wrote this down. That would be a good double feature to watch. Watch Civil War and then pick up right after with Black Widow. It'd be a really great double feature. So I wanted to bring that up because I love finding different double features for everybody to watch. Infinity War Endgame is like the ultimate double feature. I think Civil War and Black Widow would be a really good double feature. I was thinking of that when I was watching it in preparation for the episode today. I was like, wow, this would have been a really cool double feature with Civil War, because you could just go right into what Black Widow does right after it. So keep that in mind when you are doing your Marvel marathons. All right, let's get to all the categories today, and then we'll kind of wrap things up. Iconic scenes. Again, this is scenes that pop up into your brain when you hear the title Black Widow. So I got a couple of nominations here, and then I'll give my most iconic scene. So Natasha versus Taskmaster on the bridge. This is the big first fight where we get really introduced to Taskmaster and what she can do. Really awesome fighting with she's got the shield, the cap, swinging around on the ropes like Spider-Man. And they're fighting over this, basically the antidote to the mind control thing. Taskmaster has been tasked to get it back from Natasha. They end up fighting on this bridge. Natasha gets blown off of the bridge, and she ends up running away. But it was a really cool action sequence to see what Taskmaster's all about, seeing the mimic ability when he's copying. With even the stance, like that one point where they're both doing like her iconic stance together was pretty cool. Next scene, Elena does the pose and is disgusted. That's where she does it a couple times. Get that in that little convenience store where she's like, you do this superhero pose where you flip your head back. It's really weird. But then we get the actual scene that everybody loves. When they're in the red room, she jumps down the hatch in the air ducts. She lands, does a pose, and she does that little disgusted motion. It's hilarious. It's one of the funniest things, and she's just like such a poser. Great scene there. Alexei escaping prison. This is really fun, where you have Elena driving the helicopter, you have Natasha jumping down, rappelling down onto the bridge, fighting all the guards there. You have Alexei beating the shit out of all the guards as he makes his way up there. You got the avalanche coming in later on. Elena and Natasha have that really cool white widow suits, which are awesome. It's a little different than what she normally wears. But it was really cool to see Alexei, as a super soldier, beating the shit out of guards, watching Natasha do her thing and beating up guards as well. So it was a really fun action sequence. Natasha getting beat up by the widows at the end of the movie. That was a really intense scene. She gets that face off with Ray Winstone. She breaks her nose so that he doesn't smell the pheromone. She doesn't smell the pheromones, so she can beat the shit out of him. Well, he ends up calling all the widows to come in, and she's just getting all beat to hell by the widows. But eventually she's able to explode all of the antidote around the room and free all the widows. But it was pretty intense, where she's like trying not to hurt them, but she's also trying not to die, where she's beating the shit out of her former sisters. But it was a really intense scene. And then lastly, Natasha skydiving to save Yelena. This was the big action shot in the trailers where she's skydiving down. She's fighting Taskmaster at the same time. They're kind of jumping from pieces of the, space station, sky station, whatever you want to call the red room, where it's just floating up in the air. This big old, it looks like the space station, the International Space Station, but it's like in the sky. So I guess we can call it just a sky station. But that's really cool action sequence with them kind of free falling through the air, bouncing off of pieces of the facility, and she's having to save Yelena while also fighting off Taskmaster. Is really, really cool. Most iconic scene for me, though, is probably the Natasha skydiving scene where she saves Elena and fights Taskmaster. That's the one that's branded into my brain, probably because of the trailer, and it's because it's kind of like the big action set piece in the movie. You get to see her maneuver through the sky and jump off of things, and it was really cool. That's the scene that pops in my head the most. Feel free to jump in the comments on what your iconic scene is for Black Widow. All right, next we have the let's fucking go moments. This was a little tougher. Not a whole lot of them in here, but I did pick out a few. Taskmaster watching footage. You know, you get that scene where she's just standing in a room. She's just watching the video, downloading all the fight choreography, and it's like, let's fucking go. We're getting Taskmaster. We're gonna see this character just mimic the shit out of everybody and use all the skills that they have learned from all the footage. It was a really good moment. It was more like a Marvel fan moment. Natasha jumping out of the helicopter. That was pretty fucking cool. This is at the prison sequence where she rappels down onto the bridge. This, again, was in the trailer, I think it was. She does her hero stance, and then it's kind of like, let's fucking go. Let's watch Natasha kick the shit out of some dudes. And then Natasha breaks her nose in order to prevent her from not harming Ray Winstone's character, because he gives off this pheromone so that people can't attack him, which is fucking weird. Like, that could have been really written better. It's just a really weird characteristic to put at the character. But it just kind of drives home the fact that he's this, male-dominated situation where he gives off this pheromone that women in this case, but anybody can't touch him. But then she figures out to break her nose that she can't smell. So it's like, when she breaks her nose, it's like, let's fucking go. Let's kick this dude's ass. Let's fucking go moment for me is probably Taskmaster watching the footage. That's where it's like, okay, we're finally getting the Taskmaster character in the MCU. Let's fucking go. Let's see what this character can do and how they handle it. So, and the fight sequences are really good. It's just the character itself and what they do, especially the third act of the movie. That's where it really falls apart, and what they do with a lot of these characters and the story is just really unfortunate. But watching the footage is definitely my moment for sure. Couple of quotes here. Yelena, such a poser. Natasha, I've lived a lot of lives, but I'm done running from my past. Another one from Elena, you were my real mother. The closest thing I ever had to one. The best part of my life was fake, and none of you told me. This, of course, is when they're, talking over dinner, their reunion with each other after all these years, and comes to find out that their entire thing was fake. It was all staged. It was all in preparation to get Natasha and Elena ready for the Red Room, and their family was fake. It wasn't real. So, but it was real to Elena, and it really crushes her spirit. It's a really heartbreaking moment for the character. This one from Dreykov. It's my network of widows that help me control the scales of power. One command, the oil and stock markets crumble. One command, and a quarter of the planet will starve. My widows can start and end wars. They can make and break kings. Really kind of driving home the fact of how powerful his Black Widow organization is. And they are. They're a lot like the Wakandans. They can annihilate governments. Similar to the super soldiers that I'm drawing a blank. That the Sokoviets and all of them were back in Civil War, where they're like, yeah, these super soldiers can, end governments within 24 hours, It's a similar thing here with the super soldiers, except they're not super soldiers. They're just assassins, pretty much. But this line really drives home the fact of how powerful the Black Widows actually are. And then this last one from Natasha. Pain only makes us stronger. Didn't you tell us that? What you told me kept me alive. And that's what basically drives the character this entire time, from Iron Man 2 all the way up to Endgame. What she was trained to do was to stay alive. But then eventually she starts to have a family with the Avengers, and she gives her own life for them. So really cool character development in here for sure. And then some fun facts about the movie here. According to writer Eric Pearson, Florence Pugh teased Scarlett Johansson about Black Widow's iconic pose during filming, so they ended up putting it in the film, which was a great thing. That was a really, really great part to put in the film. In prison, Red Guardian shows a tattoo on his right shoulder of 2 roses. The 2 Russian names underneath them translate to Natasha and Yelena. That's pretty cool. I didn't notice that until I read the research. In the movie, Alexei, or the Red Guardian, is a father figure to Natasha Romanoff. In the original comics, Alexei and Natasha were actually husband and wife, so that's kind of weird. Also in prison, Alexei arm wrestles a giant prisoner named Ursa. In the comics, Ursa Major is a fellow Russian hero who has the ability to turn into a bear, which Alexei actually references to by calling him a bear in the movie. So he actually shapeshifts into a bear. This was the last movie William Hurt filmed before his death in 2022. His last movie to be released was The King's Daughter, which was filmed in 2014. After Hurt's death, the role of Thaddeus Ross was recast with Harrison Ford and Captain America: Brave New World. Natasha actually refers to Ross looking like he's not in great health in the movie. So that was kind of a fourth wall breaking thing. Like, hey, William Hurt's not looking good. Looks like he's passing away. And unfortunately he did. And then Harrison Ford was recast in Captain America: Brave New World, which we talked about in that episode that we did. And then we'll talk about it again when we do a rewatch. Colonel Dreykov's last name means of crap in Yiddish or Russian slang. So that was pretty interesting. Originally, filming was to take place in Russia, but due to bureaucracy, in getting approval for things and the limited on time, they moved filming to Budapest. In The Avengers, when Loki is taunting Natasha about the dark things she has done, he actually mentions Dreykov's daughter, of course referring to Ray Winstone. And then this movie was shot over a period of 87 days, which is actually pretty short for a film on this massive scale. So yes, I enjoyed Black Widow quite a bit. It's a little, we'll get into the rankings here shortly, but it's a little lower on the ranking scale. It's a little lower on the popcorn rating as well, but I still enjoy watching this movie, the action sequences, seeing Scarlett Johansson play Black Widow one more time, kind of honoring her throughout this entire period of playing the Natasha character, getting introduced to more characters like Yelena, like Alexei, who we'll meet in Hawkeye and in Thunderbolts. So a lot of universe building in this one, but it mainly is to honor Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow, which I really enjoy. I love Scarlett Johansson. I love seeing her in anything. Her performance is excellent in here. This is like her swan song, and she did a fantastic job, even though I think the writing and directing could have been a lot better. This could have been a really, really awesome movie, but unfortunately it was affected by the pandemic and just poor writing at the current staff at Disney and the director pool that they had for sure. So we'll get into the rankings now. We'll wrap things up with all the rankings, the villain scale, and the popcorn rating, of course. Okay, so first up, let me pull up the MCU ranking. So Black Widow is going to come in at 32, which seems a little lower, but it's about middle ground with all the products that we have here. So looking what's around it, 33 is Iron Man 3, 34 Doctor Strange, 35 Iron Man 2. Right above it, Age of Ultron at 31, and then the Loki series at 30 and 29, which we talked about last time. But Black Widow, like I said, it really is at the detriment of the writing and the directing. The action is really great. The performances by the actors are as best as they can. This is Natasha's movie, so Scarlett Johansson does a fantastic job at it. But it does bring in Elena, which is kind of we don't do the best of show category in the Marvel Marathon, but if I would put Florence Pugh's Elena as best in show because she steals the show pretty much. And that's what that award is for who steals the show in a movie or series. But it isn't to Scarlett Johansson's detriment, though, because Scarlett Johansson, this is still her movie. And she does get quite a bit to do in here. I just think the writing and the directing was really poor in here, and that's what really holds this movie back from being one of the great Marvel movies for sure. So 32, that is where Black Widow falls in the MCU ranking. Looking at the villain scale, we're going to lump them together. So it's going to be a 2 for today. So again, we're going to look at the performance, we're going to look at the costumes, and we're going to look at the motivation of the villain, or in this case, villains. So we're going to lump Dreykov and Taskmaster because, well, Taskmaster is his daughter, and he controls Taskmaster. So we're just going to lump them together. They are now lumped. So looking at the costumes, I really love the Taskmaster costume. It was they pulled it right out of the comics almost. Love the helmet, love the hood, love the shield, love the sword, love the action, choreography, of course, with Taskmaster, with mimicking all the heroes we've seen so far. So that part was really awesome. What holds Taskmaster back is the motivation and the performance. They just really didn't give her a lot to do. Most of the time, she's covered, so we don't get the Antonia reveal until very end of the movie. This should have been like the Winter Soldier. Like, this should have been Black Widow should have been Natasha's Winter Soldier. And that's what Taskmaster should have been. That should have been her Bucky, which it kind of was. She ends up blowing up Antonia when she's a little girl, ends up surviving, and this is what she's turned into. So I guess, in a way, this is kind of her Bucky, but not as written, not as executed as, of course, The Winter Soldier by the Russo brothers. Now, if the Russo brothers would have directed this movie, this would have been a top-notch Marvel movie for sure, just because of their talents and their caliber at director. But this should have been her Winter Soldier, and it just wasn't. It's very lacking in the writing. Not a whole lot for her to do. Same thing with Dreykov. Dreykov should have been kind of a Zemo-like character, but just they didn't give away Winstone a whole lot to do. He was just portrayed as this womanizing piece of shit guy that just human traffics women into mind controlling. Like, it's very bland, not really written out as well as it could have been. But the performance was decent by Ray Winstone. I mean, Ray Winstone's a great actor. Like, I think the first time I saw him in was The Departed, where he's Mr. French, Jack Nicholson's right-hand guy. And he's great in there as Mr. French. I love Ray Winstone. It's just really disappointing to see him in this movie because of the writing. What they had him do was very, very lackluster and just very, very poorly executed. So I'm giving them 2 Thanos heads. I thought about giving them 1, but with the costuming and what they did their best with what they were given, so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and give them 2 Thanos heads. But I could easily be talked into giving them 1, but I'm going to stick with 2 for today. And then last, but certainly not least, the popcorn rating. I'm giving it 4 popcorns. I really wanted to give this 5, but it's just the writing, the directing, the execution, especially for that third act. The Taskmaster reveal, not a whole lot the Taskmaster was given. It's just really lackluster, so I'm giving it 4 popcorns. I still really enjoy it. The action is great. It's still an iconic performance from Scarlett Johansson. We get introduced to Florence Pugh's Yelena, which is great. She becomes a fan favorite. We get introduced to David Harbour, Rachel Weisz's character. Like, the performances by the actors were the best that they can do with what they were given. This is solely based on the writing and the directing is what really holds this movie back. So 4 popcorns for Black Widow. So that's going to do it for this week's Marvel episode. Let me look at the schedule here. Next time we're going to be doing a twofer. So we're going to be doing Daredevil Born Again plus the Punisher special, which just came out the other day. The Punisher One Last Kill. But we're also going to do Daredevil Born Again seasons 1 and 2, similar to what we did with Loki. So we're going to have a giant Daredevil Punisher episode, which I'm super excited about. So I'm going to rewatch season 1 of the Punisher, season 1 of Daredevil, and then season 2 of Daredevil just wrapped up, of course. So I'll probably watch a few episodes of those as well, just to kind of refresh my brain. And then we'll finally watch One Last Kill, which I haven't watched yet. I've been waiting for the weekend to watch it. So I'm super excited about it. It sounds like it's very short, so it's going to be an easy watch. But supposedly it's like the most adult thing that Disney has ever done, which I'm super excited about. So next week's going to be a big Daredevil Punisher episode. And then after that, we'll do Shang-Chi, Eternals, Hawkeye, and then we're finally going to get to Spider-Man No Way Home, which I've been waiting for ever since we started this Marvel Marathon. I can't wait for Spider-Man No Way Home. So, yep. And then we'll also have the Mortal Kombat 2 review come out eventually, and then some other ones coming on. We're at the very beginning of the summer blockbusters, so it's going to be like every week we're going to be having a new release to talk about on the show. I'm very, very excited. The Mandalorian comes out next week as well, so we'll have that episode eventually. So, a lot of great content coming from Cinematic Reviews. So check out the website, check out the social media pages, check out all the other episodes before. So yeah, that's going to do it for today. I will let you all go. Enjoy your weekend. Have fun out there. Be safe. And we'll see you all next time.